Hi there. Welcome to Peppers and Flowers, where sales and marketing don't make sense. Please join us for the conversation.
Episode 2. That was my part.
Awesome.
Yeah. Man, it's been a week since we did our first podcast, and I got to tell you, I was really anxious to get the next one out. I was like, can it be Saturday already? Man.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone was biting at the chomps too. I shared it with some people and like, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? I'm like, okay, we gotta wait a little bit. But it's funny, once you start getting the ball rolling, it goes a lot faster, and I think we'll see some progression here on activity, and as well as good content being pushed out. So
Yeah, it was funny. I got constructive criticism actually,
mhm.
which normally I think people would be uh maybe people wouldn't like that so much, but I thought that was awesome. I was like, man, someone that took the time to listen to our new podcast and send me constructive criticism, that must mean
Wow.
something, right? Like,
Yeah, that's cool.
I was like, sweet, tell me more. Awesome.
Yeah, and I had to explain the whole peppers and flowers to a couple people, and they're like, "Really, peppers and flowers? What's that mean?" And I explained it to a guy last night over a sales training, actually, and he was really engaged in it. So it sounds like the concept of peppers and flowers is starting to catch on to some people, which I think is pretty cool. So
Yeah, I do too. Man,
yeah,
James,
yeah.
and we all know what happened last weekend, which is just tragic, but I'm still in shock about Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I actually wrote a poem. I don't know why, because like when I lose, obviously when people close to me pass away, or some major incidents happen in my life,
Yeah.
a lot of times I don't know how to express myself. So I actually sometimes write songs or poems just to kind of like express myself, and through that I feel a little bit better. Would it be cool if I read this poem real quick?
Dude, I'd love to hear it.
All right, so it's called Kobe, right? So it's Kobe, and it says, a legend of basketball, a man who knew how to stand tall, a friend of many, cherished by many, open with his life, lived above the strife. Kobe, you pursued your dreams, live greater than what seems. The Lakers were blessed to have you. Oh, you are missed. Can't believe it's true. We wish your family peace, your friends peace, your fans peace. We find peace knowing that God is in control. He knows when a sparrow breathes its last breath. He watches over us, all of us, and is with us all right now. Let's all rest in him. So I really felt like, this whole incident that you
Mm.
mentioned, it took me by surprise, and it took a lot of people by surprise. And, you almost feel like the floor underneath you kind of, slips away, and you're like falling now, like, where am I going in all this? But I just wanted to write this poem to say, hey, look, let's rest in knowing that, there's someone in control. And I believe that's God that's watching over us, taking care of us. So no need to worry.
Yeah. No, that was James, you're artistic, man. I didn't know that. I'm shocked you're not a musician. You should learn to play guitar. I'll
Yeah.
start a band. Dude, man.
Yeah.
No, that was awesome. I know it was tragic though. Kobe Bryant was kind of like Michael Jordan for me growing up. I mean, I
Oh,
just turned 30 in January.
yeah.
It was January. Uh, and I remember like I was never really into basketball games too much, but I remember watching all the games and hearing people talk about it. He was like I said, the Michael Jordan kind of thing. So it's sad and tragic and weird, but you know, he definitely left his mark. The guy will go down as a legend. I think they're actually thinking about changing the logo to the NBA logo to a silhouette of Kobe.
Yeah, I saw that with like the purple and orange, or purple and yellow. They had like a kind of a vote or something like that, and people casted their votes.
Yeah,
Um,
even
yeah.
the original NBA player, I forgot his name, who was in that logo. Um, he agreed. He gave the okay to actually have him change it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I thought that was pretty. I don't remember his name though. I'll have to search it up. But
Is it
anyways,
is
I
it
know.
Bill Walton? Isn't it Bill Walton?
No, I thought it was something Harrison, something like that.
Oh.
I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
George Harrison.
Yeah, no, right on.
I think that's a
Yeah,
beetle.
but that's cool that he gave up that right there. That's, I mean, it takes time to develop that rapport, but then, once, if you want to give it to somebody else, it's like, it shows a little bit, just humility and a sense of giving. That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, he'll be missed, man. He will be missed. But
Yeah.
anyways, well,
Yeah, man. Well, to me, we're doing a podcast and we're professionals in our fields of sales and marketing, and he was a scholar in his own right, as far as being like a basketball scholar, right? Knew everything about the game and pushed himself to the limit, to the hilt every day, and he got to the point where he could run full games without resting, and like his body developed that much stamina. So let's push ourselves to honor that and be the best we can be in our profession, and help many people along the way. Is there anything you want to talk about today that could help our audience from a maybe a learning standpoint or a professional standpoint?
yeah, I think what we should do today, I got some really cool and fun stuff I think we should spitball on. Since this is really like our first material podcast that we're launching right now, let's talk a little bit about some like elusive things, right? Like
Mhm.
one call closes, right? That's
Ah,
like the elusive dragon of sales. Like everyone's striving for this thing.
yeah.
Let's talk about that first. I think that's gonna be a really fun topic because
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of practicality to it if
yeah.
you have the right understanding of a one call close. Um, and James, I know you have a system. What kind of more of a philosophy of a one call close? And I think it aligns a lot with my philosophy of a one call close.
Hmm.
Um, and I think if we explain that a little bit, it might add some
Yeah.
practicality of expectations, or you're really trying to get something out of it than just ultimately want to, you want to close the sale, of course, but the one call close might be more based on the value you've provided to lock them in.
Right. Yeah, honestly, we talk about locking in and kind of like getting people in the zone and getting them to the point where they're just like, oh, I'm all in, right? And we even say that sometimes. We say those words, I'm all in, right? And poker players, they put all their cards on the table, we're all in. So it's like, what is that? How do you get to that point in the sales process where, people are just, they have no questions, no holds barred, they're just fully committed? Um, Honestly, that just, if you want me to talk about it a little bit, sometimes we only have one chance to close a sale. And that's not always the case. A lot of times, we have several meetings, but people always ask me like, how do you make that, 3 appointment, 4 appointment sales call to a single call? And, whether it's on the phone or in person, it's not something to be afraid of. I want to say, first of all, we need to remember that we have a valuable product or service that the person we're speaking with can benefit from, and their purchase would be, a great starting point, and we need to approach these situations with a lot of excitement. Our prospects can really sense if we're interested in their welfare, and if they sense that, they would buy from us. If we showed this in our presentation, we shouldn't come across pushy or aggressive, but with respect and encouragement. Our prospects really need to feel comfortable with purchasing from us. And if we're respectful and encouraging, they're a lot more likely to purchase. Also, when answering questions during the call, it's best to give in pairs. In other words, if you answer a question, give additional information that'll be helpful to your prospect. They'll be a lot more engaged and see that you're a helpful person. And again, will be more likely to purchase. So if the prospect asks you, do you have shirts that are polos as well as long sleeve? It's okay to say yes. And by the way, they come in red, green, and black. You give in pairs during your calls, and you'll have a greater chance of closing a sale. Attitude is really important in a one call close situation. By focusing on your prospect with the right attitude, your calls will be a lot more successful, and your customers will be thanking you that they signed up. Really, in the end, your prospects want to see that you're stable and they can trust in you. And so if you're offering advice, offering more than just a single word answer, if you're giving them in pairs, if you're developing a sense of trust and stability by your attitude, that you're not being desperate or pushy, but you're really just being there, excited to sign them up, excited to sell them their goods, they're more likely to purchase. So that's just a little bit of what I've come across in my experience. And, I have a couple of companies I've worked for where the one call close was definitely something that was, a must, because I was in the auto
Yeah.
industry. I sold BMW, and if the customer didn't buy that single day, highly likely they would come back and buy, and that's maybe a year later, right? But like, BMW, it's a long day sometimes. They come, early in the morning, and it takes a few hours, maybe even half the day to close the sale, because they want to test drive it. They have all these questions. So the one call close on those kinds of single visits, I learned that I had to just remain consistent in my attitude to really get them into that new BMW. Be consistent with my approach and how I explain things to them, not trying to be too pushy with certain things or try to sell them something they weren't interested in. Really just catering to my customer and almost giving them an outlet to experience a life. It's like, hey, this BMW is going to be an extension of your life. It's gonna make sense for you to purchase this. So a lot of what I find helpful in the one call close is also like narrative selling, where you're kind of like creating a story for the person to come into and be like, yeah, this really makes sense for my life right now. So the timing's perfect, everything's perfect, and so they'll purchase. Also, another industry was the mortgage industry, where I was actually selling leads into the mortgage industry. Very competitive, very high, fast paced. It was during 2006, 2007, where mortgages were just very popular before the big crash in 2008. And I was selling leads, and these were like real-time leads, $25 a piece to the mortgage industry.
Oh
And
yeah.
what I
Yeah.
would do, yeah, it was just, these price points for prices they would sell. And the big push then was I had to sell out entire states. Like they would say, okay, you have to sell 400 leads to the state of California, or 5,000 leads to the state of Montana, whatever it is. And then you would call those states and call mortgage brokers and say, look, I have 400 leads for your whole state. Do you want to buy them all out right now? And for that kind of call to close, you have to create a sense of urgency for sure, but also you have to just seem like, yeah, of course you would want to buy this, just matter of factly spell things out for people. And they would buy out entire states of leads from me. I would sell out states, and I was known in the company as being the state seller, and they would always go, oh, James, how many states do you sell out today? And it was just a fun thing in the office. But, it was something that I did on the phones, but I remember telling myself on the phones during those calls, don't be pushy, don't be desperate, and don't be rude, because when you sometimes you're trying to push something in a one call close, the tendency is to be a little rude, like, oh, you need to buy this, like, what's wrong with you, but you never
Yeah.
say those things. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
for me, I feel well, there's this thing where sales is the type of topic that has so many layers to it. So you could find 20 different people giving you different courses on sales with completely different strategies behind it. It's crazy how in depth this topic can go. I mean, like any topic really, but it's weird because it doesn't seem like such a complex situation, because they give you formats. This is how it goes. You do this, you say that, rebuttals, you say this, and this happens, and then you close. But they can do that in so many different ways, and there's so much human behavior and psychology behind it, actually. And probably the most common thing I've been seeing, in my opinion, is normally like a discovery call and then a closing call. So discovery call purely is no sales, nothing like that. You're really just gathering information. So when you get them and schedule the second call, that's when you have the plan, their pain points. You're able to kind of guide them along that centralized rope of thought. And basically the rope of thoughts, people probably heard this before, but I really like this thought. I think this is probably one of the most practical sales guide you can follow. So there's like a rope. I think a few other people talk about this too. It's nothing really new, but you have this centralized rope. Okay. And this is basically a train of thought. This is the thought line of the conversation. You're in control. You kind of guide them through this rope. But the rope has frays. So there's a little phrase sticking out here and there. And so you can move away from that centralized line with like the phrase, and that could be like conversation, talking about weather, or whatever it might be, building a rapport, but you always come back to that centralized point. And I always feel like that always stays true. And I always also feel like the sales part is really dependent on who you're talking to as well, because I think everyone's a buyer. People like to buy. I think when someone's like, I don't like to buy things, I think that's not really true, because if out of the entire time they've been alive and they purchased something, I bet there's been one time, or at least one time, when they purchased something and they felt really excited about it. So people like to purchase. And if there wasn't a money issue, like if no one had to worry about money or anything, or be on a budget, people would just buy stuff all the time. They like to
Absolutely.
buy things. And if they don't want to buy now, they'll buy later or at some point. So I think at the end of the day, people are trying to get these one call closes. Like they said the right things. They closed it. They got their credit card. It's like, bam, 30 minutes, closed sale. And I think the one call close, well, this is my opinion, is more of how much value can you give to someone without them necessarily taking advantage of you to get free service out of you, because I know that can happen sometimes. But how much value can you show them what it's like to work with you in 30 minutes, which is like a typical phone call, or 45 minutes, for them want to come back and actually give you the time of day to start consulting with each other. So I think that's, for me, like the one call close, like, because everyone's trying to hit that 2% of people who's ready to buy now. If ads aren't profitable within 15 days, or our campaign, it's not working, cut it off. Because we're all trying to get that one call close done. Like, we want the buyers now, when 98% of other people are future buyers, and they don't nurture things. They just kind of like, they don't want to put the work in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they're right. And so if you can focus on an audience that everyone else is not focused on, because it might take more work, then you have a better advantage, because then the people that you've connected with will remember you more of the experience they've had. So they'll choose you because you might be, not because you're less expensive or anything, but they might actually be willing to pay more because there's a meaning behind it. Like they have some sort of connection, like you've built this value based around it.
Yeah. And as far, yeah,
it's interesting. That's what I
yeah.
try to do with the calls. And when you have less pressure on yourself to feel like I have to close this call, I tend to see better results and value that makes me stand out from other people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of like that old adage that says, people don't remember, what you say, but they remember how you made them feel, and I think it's important, like when you talk to people, in sales, or, in any kind of environment where there's a sale happening, that you talk to people like you would in a way to a close friend or a family member, and just like explain things in a way that come from a place of really caring and understanding people, because they'll sense right away, is this person really just trying to make an extra dollar today, or is he really trying to help me out today, or does he really understand my issues? And like when you really spend time, they call it consultative selling, to consult with people, it makes a huge difference. And so even if you don't get a signed document, or any kind of a transaction of funds that day, it doesn't mean that wasn't successful. I think I base my success off of, did I make that person feel better today? Was I able to help them get to a better place professionally than they were before. Sometimes, and I've offered so much, and this is just me talking, but I've offered so much advice and free services without getting paid. I've put myself out for
Oh yeah.
prospects and customers over time, and you're just giving advice, giving more, scenarios and giving ideas.
Jay, I
And
did that too. When I first started, I did that too.
yeah.
And I did that too because I was thinking, oh, I'll see. Here's the downfall of it though. Like you give people free trials, free service because whenever you do that, by the way, you should only do it just to get experience. No more expectation because those
Mm,
people will never convert. But when I did that, I did it for like 2 months and I was just starting off. So I was trying to learn things and I did it because, I have to start somewhere and none of
mhm,
them were the right client to have. You know, even if you said I'm going to charge you $1, it would be a no-go. So like
mhm,
if you ever do free trials or whatever, just do it for learning purposes. Or like if you what, actually a cool thing too is if you want to learn sales and you're like rusty on it and you just want to get your time in, you should just find a friend and be like James, I could come to you and be like, James, I'm a little rusty on my sales. Like I'll do sales for you for free. Just let me do sales for you. I just got to like sharpen my game basically.
mhm, mhm.
Get in front of people, work on your sales, which helps you help a friend out, grow your skills. Doesn't hurt. But man, I gotta tell you, free trials. I know it was horrible. It was great though. I learned a lot.
Right. Yeah. Chalk it up for experience. Right. I mean, it all helps us in the end, but like there's some learning curves, some pain points, and it's just a lot of struggle through the process. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I like what you said though earlier. I want to go back to that because you said something about like there's this kind of this thread or a string of knowledge or information that's going on in a dialogue in sales, and like you had to kind of always come back to that. This is almost a psychology of things that we kind of go off track with like a story or maybe some chit chat about different things, but then we always have to come back to
Yeah.
that, right, to that discussion, right? And
Well, I think Jordan Belfort mentions that a lot too.
mhm,
Uh, but I mean, the one going back to the one called Close. I mean, yeah, that's true. You have to be in charge of it, or else the prospect's going to be in charge and take over, and you're just going to lose traction. It's just not going to work out. So you
right.
always have to be in control. Like there's certain things in sales that you have to do. Like you have to maintain your control. You have to be in charge of the conversation. That's just a must. And that just
Mm,
comes with practice. Like you just need to, you'll eventually go from not knowing what to say to doing it enough and knowing how to basically control the conversation without even thinking about it.
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
only times I've ever had one call closes were from clients who, well, first of all, a one call close could be, let's just say you have, think of it this way. This might make things a lot easier for you. A one call close, in my opinion, could be like, well, you have multiple phone calls with this guy or girl or whoever it is. And then you get on another phone call and then you close them. Technically that was one phone call to close them. It's not like
Yeah.
you did half now and then charge them later on another phone call. You see what I mean? So in a way, that's kind of
Right.
one call close if you want to twist it. But
Yeah.
the only times I ever had one call closes are from clients who were actively searching for a specific service. Like they
Mhm,
knew they were looking for, I don't know, a website, whatever. They're like, I need a website that needs this, it needs that. I must have
mhm.
this functionality. Here's my budget. Those I've
Right.
had multiple one call closes, and I didn't do anything special more than just follow that line of control. You know,
Right.
it's also and it's also crazy how you can't really piss people off for asking questions. And
Mhm.
stuff we're saying is not like complicated because I don't think sales is complicated. Uh, but having a curious mindset can help you. You don't assume
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
To give you an idea of how I do my sales, like I said, the one call close where I get on the phone one time and then we close the deal, that usually only happens when they're sure of what they're looking for, or like if you sign up for freelance websites or something like that, where like people are looking for something, you get on a phone call with them. There's already a sense of trust because there's a third party in the middle of you. That can happen when one call closes. That's pretty simple. But in terms of the process I do for someone who's new, I always try to the first phone call, okay, is always like 30, 40 minutes, right? Because I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking like, hey, listen, why don't we just get started and just tell me about what you're doing. And they'll talk most of the time. And I'm just listening. I'm hearing what they're saying. And then I'll ask questions because essentially what I'm trying to do is understand their business as much as I can before the call ends.
Yeah. I mean, understanding, you said that word, that's part of the process. If that in the word understanding, there's a sense of, I get what you're saying. I understand you, I understand your company. Therefore I'm the best person to help you. Right. And I think that's cool. I think people at the end of the day, like, we want to control the conversation to the extent that we know what we're talking about and we have a handle on things. And then also too, like, leading them to the next thought. It's like, oh, that's great about your company or what you're going through, I totally get it. And then what are your next steps, or what are you thinking for the future? And all of a sudden now you brought them to another level of say thinking or understanding. And now you're talking about, oh, okay, so you're almost setting yourself up to provide the solution that will help them reach those goals. You're like, oh, so you want to get to this point that we just talked about. Well, hey, we could do those things to help you get there. How does that sound? And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, you helped me get to this thought and you can provide the solution and it sounds perfect. Even if somebody else were to come in and pitch the same product or service to help them get there, you were the one to help them to get to that place in their thinking. And so they would want to go with you, and all that good stuff. So,
Yeah, but
so yeah.
I agree. And I'm also believe like, if you just follow up with people, like, okay, if you just talk to more people, okay, we're talking about the two of this. Let's just say one guy has no sales experience. If he just calls and talks to more people, right, he'll probably do just as well because he's just talking to enough people. There's people out there who just like get on the first phone call with you and they go, yeah, I'm looking for this. This is what I want. Great, let's do it. And you don't even have to necessarily have any sales experience. Like, if you just call enough people, you'll get something. And that's the beauty of it too. But when talking about like leakage and trying to make sure that you can handle every person that comes in and have the best results to close them, or most probability to close someone, there's a process. But I think the main thing is knowing how to like talk to each individual person. And if you can keep that marketing, well, it's also the thing with marketing. Like, if you can, everyone, like I said, everyone's trying to hit that 2%, but no one really wants to hit the long-term thing. It's all short-term. And no one wants to do the long-term, build your pipeline, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. No, it's totally true.
But
It's
if you just
yeah.
talk to more people, everyone's going to buy from you. If like Grant Cardone said that, I just love all these guys. These are like my favorite guys. Grant Cardone was like, he's like, everyone's a buyer. Even if he's like, everyone's interested, even if they say no thanks.
Absolutely.
Because the way to think about it is that, well, if you're business to business and they're a business owner, right? They run a business. So everything they need is what most likely you offer. And whether they say no thanks, it's still something that they utilize. Like, hey, want to buy a website? No. Well, there's still probably interest in there because they still have a business. And if you don't have a website for your business, that's just kind of a basic thing, right? So at some
No,
point,
absolutely.
if they're
Yeah.
utilizing it anyways. So if you get them at the right time, they'll utilize you, and that
Yeah,
might be
totally.
because, there's this, I know I'm ranting a little bit, but man, there's this guy I've been calling for like a year and a half. Okay, year and a half.
Yeah.
small deal, not big. Um, and I've been following up for him for like a year and a half. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to close this deal. But the thing is, every time I call him, he's like, no, I'm ready to do, yeah, we're going to do something together. But, message
Yeah.
my wife. She'll get on a phone call with you. It's just constant chase.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know I'm going to get him. And when I do, whether it's $20 or $50, it's still one step closer to my ultimate goal. And it's worth doing. I'm not going
Yeah.
to get him if I stop.
I kid you not, man. That it's persistence. I mean, I had a client where I initiated the conversation like 4 years prior to closing. So it was like I made an initial call to the organization, literally 4 years. I mean, you
Yeah.
think, I mean, I could have got a college degree and came back and finished the deal,
Dude, I know for sure.
I'd have been Dr. Chung by then, I mean, what's going
Dr.
on?
Chung.
That's like,
God.
but it works. I mean, we
I
closed the
know.
deal. Yeah.
Well, another thing too is I think to make this practical, like, there's two things I gotta say. First of all, to make this practical, for people just starting out, the biggest thing you'll have to learn is getting over that fear. I mean, think about it. You just call someone up, and you don't even know what you have to say. Just get started. Just call them and go, hey, you want some marketing? just break the ice. Just get into it.
Right.
And what are they going to do? No, and hang up. And then guess what? You're still alive. You're still sitting there. Nothing bad happened. But that fear of, I don't want to do the next phone call. What if I get rejected? I think that's the biggest thing to overcome for new people. And I think for people who've been doing sales for a long time,
Yeah.
I think the next thing would be, well, they already know how to do this. They're already successful. They have their pipeline. They're kind of all doing this. They have everything figured out pretty much. But you can always sharpen your skills. And I always think, what can make you different than every other sales guy out there? And honestly, I'm not totally sure what that is necessarily.
No, honestly, that's you know what, that question, this is worth the whole episode right now, because that is something that everyone's thinking, but then it's kind of like that pink elephant, where they call it, no one's talking about it, but it's definitely there. And so it's like, I think the answer to that question, Daniel, is that inherent in who we are, like, all of us are already unique and different, because there's no two of the same Daniels, two of the same Jameses, two of the same anybody in the whole world. And so by nature of just being born, we're already unique and individual. And so it's like, and so like, there's nobody that can be who we are or do what we do. So even though you may, or some of the listeners out there may be working for a corporation or a business where there's multiple salespeople or executives on their team, you're still the only And so the way you talk, the way you ask questions, the way you listen, just your mannerisms, how you are, your personality, all those things make you different. And so it's like, we don't have to try. Honestly, I wrote my high school essay to go into college. I said, just be yourself. That was my topic. And so I think that's what it is now. It's like, just be yourself, because when you're just yourself, now you are that unique person that everybody wants to get to know, get to like, and they'll buy from you more if you're just being yourself. I've done it myself, where I mimicked sales reps, or people in the profession. I try to
Yeah,
talk
like
like they did.
sales trainings and processes and
Yeah,
all that.
and like, I mean, yeah, it could take you so far to kind of get you into your own groove of doing things. But once you find your own groove, just be yourself, because that's always you can never forget how to just be yourself, right? And so it's like, that's why I always tell people, just to be yourself.
I think the best thing is, again, if you're starting out, I think the best thing, which helped me a ton, is just go into it and make phone calls. Because it's like the hardest thing to get a new person to do because there's so much anxiety behind it. But once you break through that and you're like, man, this is simple, then work on your process. Because you went past like the hardest part. Work on your process, which is, information gathering. And this sounds really typical, I guess, but it's just, there's so much different things and strategies and all stuff about sales, but they'll talk most of the time. Give them the opportunity. Just listen, ask them questions about the business. How much you make in a month? Oh, okay. Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to show them that you're interested in them. And then you're going to prescribe the right option based on the information they give you. Right? So I think in terms of being different can really come from what everyone else is not doing. And I think now sales methods now are proven to work, right? I mean, that's how businesses are thriving and make their sales and stuff. But there's got to be another way that I'm starting to tap into that is working quite well. And an example of that is I've been trying this thing where I get people on the phone and I don't even mention services. I don't even mention anything. The only thing I mention is, maybe about who I am in the company and all that stuff. But it's all about them. So I show them what it's like to work with me, and I create that environment. So I don't even create a sales environment. I just pretend I'm already working with this person. And having that mindset actually puts me in the right mindset of, I'm here to help them, not just like close the sale. And I've been getting great responses because the relationship I've built this way, they've been coming to me now. And it's kind of weird actually. But the thing is, you have to be careful because you'll hit people where they'll kind of keep milking you, They'll know. And so they go, okay, this guy's going to like keep giving me information. So you kind of have to know like when to stop that necessarily. But the fact that you have people calling you and coming to you this way is you basically are inbound pipeline. And
totally.
And you're able to build these relationships so well. Like I have this guy who wasn't actually going to use my services, but I kept helping him out with things. And this is like verbal things, not like actual labor per se, but just verbal stuff through email. And he ended up coming back and like doing a few things with me because he actually hired someone else, but he wasn't very happy with them. And I was kind of walking him through all this stuff of what she should do and consulting. And then he ended up like coming back to me and said, can you just do it? Like, I really like how you do things. I didn't really necessarily sell anything.
Yeah. It's not there's no term for that. It's just, you're just helping someone out and you're just, being their friend and you're showing them things that they now either implement to their company or they think is just a good idea. So they see you as kind of like a friend, a consultant. So they'll just come back to you for more free consulting. And then after a while, it's like, you know what? I do want to do something now. And you've been the best person to help me so far. So yeah, can I go with you guys, and it's almost just assumed. Some people call it the assumptive close or whatever, but I think it's just it almost ties back into the one call close because these one call closes. I think it's a great victory if you can close them in that single phone call. But it's really more of an attitude of how you talk to someone on the phones or in person. It's kind of more of a way of approaching sales because I could treat like those consultative, prospects as one call closes. You're just like, yeah, I'm here for you. I'm helping you out. And, it may not close in that first meeting, but they'll come back for that second meeting, that third or fourth. It might take a while, but it could still be a one call close mentality where you're trying to just help them out to close them in a way that they will eventually come back to you and actually purchase. And the transaction is just the details, right? So it's like, Yeah, so I think that's really valuable. And like I alluded to something earlier, and I know we're probably running out of time here, but it's called I said the narrative selling approach, right? This is something that, if you've been around sales long enough, that you're trained in these classes to tell a story, tell like a parable or a story of, this happened to me, and this is kind of like, the situation I was in, and you try to get people to buy into your story. I I'm not talking about that, and what I'm about to say right now, but it's like something similar. But something I've been working on these days is narrative selling, is what I call it. And that is where when you meet someone and you're talking to them, everyone has limited time. We only, we all have 24 hours in a day. So it's like, let's talk about things that provide someone an atmosphere of, this is kind of almost like this is meant to be. It's best if we work together. Look at the situation you're in. Look at your company, how they're doing. Look at this company that I'm with, the product and service we're providing. And doesn't it make perfect sense that we're meeting right now to talk about the service, that this can really help you guys? And doesn't it make sense that you step forward into this new environment and work with us, right? And then when you kind of do that narrative selling, they're like, you know what, you're right. Like the timing is right, the atmosphere is right, and you guys have the ability to help us out. Yeah, let's just move forward with this. Because then now people they're not calculating every detail about the terms and conditions, the privacy policy, all these other things. They're just looking at the very basic fact that it makes sense to work together right now. So let's move forward. And so you almost help them be that character in their own narrative. So now guess what? When they go back to their management and talk about what they just decided to do, or to their spouse or business partner, they're like, yeah, that makes total sense. I'm glad you made that decision. So
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of stuff. Just, I think one thing for sure is you should not convince people. I don't think you should convince anyone, which sounds weird. Now, again, I'm trying to make this practical, right? So control is main. I think that's most important. But also just being able to be in control of the conversation, but come off as casual without them knowing. It's like subtleties. Sales is like a subtle art, really. So you're kind of, you have a format that is not recognized to the listener. Because even if you're not in sales and you're getting a formatted sales call, you can tell, and when you have a real conversation with someone, you can tell. It's just part of your instincts. So it should never be about convincing. I don't try to convince anyone they should go with me. I always just put everything forward with that control. I think that's probably the most important thing. You just have to learn how to be subtle with your control. I think that once you get that, everything becomes much easier. And then just by doing the sales, it becomes easier too. And learning about the business. I think there's two things. Learn about the customer's business. If you're business to business, obviously, learn about the customer's business. And then there's a second stage, which would be prescribing best options for them. And then I'd say there's a closing phase, right? So you've described the prescription you're giving, you've made sure they understand it, but you don't give too much technical detail, because marketers and sales guys, and we come up with crazy terms, the one of the crazy terms is conversion, which is the most vague thing ever. But if you say conversion to a marketer or a sales guy, they go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But these guys don't know what that means. There's so many different areas that could mean conversion. Who knows what that means? But the prescription phase, making sure they understand it so they know how this works for them. And another thing too is not being afraid to ask for payment, close the deal. Cool, let's do this. Man, you're gonna love this. Ready to do this? Let's make this happen. Whatever you say. But if they're hesitant, I don't think there's the convincing part. It's more of, you probably missed an explanation, or you didn't touch a point that you should have touched a little more, perhaps, right? Or maybe they're just not the right client. But I don't think, because you'll always hit someone who will be the right client for you. There's enough people out there. So I think format, I think trying to be different than what other people are doing. I think the best way that I found that works best for me is not even thinking about the sales. I mean, I'm thinking about getting new clients. I want to work with this person, but take a different approach. I think the best thing you can do is look at what everyone's training you to do and do it differently, because then you know what competitive advantage you have over them. I think that's one of the best things that's been helping me, because it's been working. People have been going, man, I don't feel like you're selling me. Like you actually helped me. And they didn't even sign on, and I didn't even put much effort. I just put some extra verbal words to them, helped them out with responded to a few extra emails.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes you feel a little bit better sleeping at night too. Like, hey, you know what? I just go throughout my whole days helping people out, giving good advice, and trying my best. And in the end too, not only do your hearers benefit, like the prospects, not only do they benefit, but we benefit too, because we're learning as we go too. It's like, and we benefit by getting better at our craft. And so it's a wonderful, like they say, it's like a win-win, right? So.
Well, last thing I gotta say is, okay, here's something to think about. What if you incorporated sales, some fundamental sales, like control the conversation, right? Probably as the foundation. Let's just say that. What if you incorporate sales and make a hybrid with customer service? So you have sales that you're doing.
Yeah.
But you have a customer service mindset. And the human psychology, I think, I'm not, okay, I say that, I'm not like a psychologist or anything. I just like to think what people are thinking, maybe. But I feel like the worst times in a customer's experience will be from customer service, because they call because they're having a problem. And if they, but they're willing, if they're having a bad problem, they're willing to call. They're willing to wait. They might be a little pissed off when they get on the phone, but think about the process of customer service when you call those centers. They transfer you, you're on hold, you're pissed off. You see what I'm saying? But they're in it. So what if you could duplicate that type of commitment, but offering a customer service perspective and showing them the great experience that people normally sometimes have when they're off customer service? Go, man, that was great. That was amazing. Such good service, right? If you apply that to your sales process to make people want or have that urge, rather than you've convinced them enough and now you have to prove yourself. I don't know. It's just a fun thought. I've always thought that, like, customer service, providing your service or some sort of thing to show them what it's like to work with you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, customer service is a, back in the day, like, I guess people thought, oh, customer service kind of entry level or whatever. But like, I spent 5.5 years in customer service, and in my first professional career out of college, and like, it was just the most amazing thing, and I learned a lot. I was in a call center, took 100+ phone calls a day, doing data entry, and it was my first time kind of really hearing my own voice and talking to people that I didn't know, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool, but I never saw that this would help me in my long-term career in sales either, because I just thought it was its own discipline. But in the end, man, good customer service is good sales. I firmly believe in that. And customer service, it is a service you're providing. You make people feel good about themselves. But it's one of the hardest things too, because you have irate people yelling at you, talking, treating you like you're less than, and you have to kind of overcome those things and not get upset. You have to really have thick skin. You have to have the service, kind of servant-oriented mindset, and really help people, even though they treat you poorly, you know. So I mean, customer service, good customer service is good sales. And the word that I like that encapsulates all this is the word winsome. You know, just kind of this word that I like to say is like, you know, if you want to be a good salesperson, be winsome. You know, what does that mean? It means kind of have this kind of upbeat attitude, that you're positive, you're helpful. You know, you're really you're very attractive. You know, that people want to go, man, I want to talk to that person. You know, or it's in some ways I want to be like that person. Although that's not our goal, but like, hey, I want to talk to that person and get to know them, and that person really, not only are they helpful and cheerful, they know their product, you know. So it's like, let's be winsome sales reps, or, you know, professionals
Yeah.
for that matter, you know, right? I mean, it
Well,
captures.
no, for
Yeah.
sure. The last thing I got to mention is, you know, knowing your product too really helps, because then you know how to
Mhm.
explain it very well. So you don't stumble, you don't question things or say things incorrectly. So it's almost like, just start making phone calls, right? And maybe you've already been in sales, so the next thing could probably be, now that this is the whole point of this podcast. You know, we're just trying to think a little differently and try to like say things that might not make too much sense, but maybe it might spark something, and someone might go, man, you know what, that I should give that a go. Because, you know, we don't have enough creativity in business. I don't think. I think it's like set in a certain tone and in a certain way. But what I'm trying to point out is, there's so much more combinations of things that you can do. And that's why we have these prodigies and people that pop up, because they're always doing something different that no one's thinking about. And I'm a huge believer in, if you're starting sales, just make phone calls, because the more you do, it'll make more sense. And just make sure you know your product. And then as you grow and you become a high performing sales guy at a corporation or your own firm or whatever it is, maybe you can think more about, man, you know, at this point, I say something really technical. I say, you know, we have three options. There's this one, and that one. Which one would you like to do? So when you get to a certain performance level, maybe you can tweak more specific things. So you're a higher performing sales guy. And so maybe you would say, yeah, we have package 1, 2, and 3. Most people go with package 2. You see what I'm saying? So now you're
Absolutely.
using like this human psychology thing where you're putting people in cohorts, because people like to be in groups. So you're saying, well, most people go with 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of just like, just figure out your process, figure out your product, figure out how you do your sales, work up, make sure you can follow your process subtly, very non-rugged, you know,
Yeah.
smooth, you feel good, and then
Yeah.
worry about the details. You know, worry about, man, you know, what if I tweak this word? Or what if I say it this way? You know?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. And last thought that I have, Daniel, is just I feel like things are changing for the industries nowadays. How people like to be sold to, and I think selling from the heart as opposed to selling from the mind is kind of the shift that I see happening. You know, a lot of people think if I just know enough information about something, then people will buy from me. And I know that that could be true, and we might think that's the best way to go sometimes, but I think people are looking for someone to sell from the heart, you know, and the heart has a lot of knowledge too. There's a lot of wisdom and things like that, and information as well. But it's also selling from a place of reality, you know. Like, I'm just, you know, hey, I'm a real person with real issues and trying to help you out with yours. Let's get along and let's work together, you know. And I think that that's what's going on nowadays, is because of, and I don't want to get into all the details as to why. We can rant and rave about that all day long, but I mean, it is if we come from a place of reality, man, people will just connect with us better and they'll want to buy from us. So that's my last thought. Anything else from your end, Daniel?
No, again, I just, you know, I'm excited about got a lot of stuff to say, but I'll save that. I'm just excited. You know, like I said, the purpose, what we're trying to do is just, I'm really just trying to, there's a certain format to business. There's certain like stigma, there's a certain thing. And I just want to point, like, it's okay to brainstorm. It's okay to think things that don't make sense a little bit, or might go against what that status quo is, you know? And,
That's right.
and at the end of the day, if we can think, you know, it's okay. What can I do? What's the next thing? What about if we do this? That is, that's like the essence of innovation and being creative. I think we just need to be more creative and in business, and know that it's okay to come up and say crazy things.
There you go. Hey, you said it, man. I mean, I guess you know, all of us that have our own personalities and unique ways of being, and so let's not limit who we are. Let's believe in, you know, the abilities that we have, the talents and gifts and abilities that we have, and put
Yeah.
them to play in the marketplace. You know, and you know, I wouldn't want to replace anybody else. You know, and try to act like somebody else, and I would hope that I could have my own identity as well too.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Before we go, I want to mention one last thing.
yeah,
This is a question to everyone. So here's something you could think about, and this might sound really corny, but you know, whether you're new, intermediate, or you're the like top performing sales guy or whatever, whoever you are, you know, if you spend a few minutes thinking, what's one thing that you could come up with that might be a little crazy, but what's one thing you can come up with that you think could help you innovate what you're already doing or break through the next level? And I'll just leave it kind of open ended like that. You know, what's the one thing you think that you could probably do creatively to boost your game or get better or whatever it might be, you know? And
absolutely.
don't filter it. Just go off whatever you think is a good idea. And I think that's a good start. So it's like a therapy session, man. Well,
Yeah, man. So use it to and share it in the mirror with yourself, and then share it with a friend or a family member.
just be
And
honest, you know, don't think, oh, that's too artistic, that's too creative, that's too this. Yeah, just go with it. You know, we're humans, we're creative creatures. You know, use your
right,
creative side. Let's have a little fun. It's okay to think a little oddly and weird, not make much sense. But imagine if it does work. Everyone's gonna love you.
right. There you
Yeah.
go. That's right. No rejection in this world, right? When you're just being
Yeah.
yourself. So,
Exactly. Just have some fun, you know? Stop
right.
overthinking things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, friends, now that's a wrap. We look forward to joining you next Saturday. Daniel and James signing off.